Jets Falcons this Sunday in the Meadowlands. Turnovers are going to be a big factor, and we'll discuss why today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in, Jets fans and Falcons fans. It's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, along with Aaron Freeman, the host of Locked On Falcons. Getting ready for Week 13 action, the Atlanta Falcons visit the New York Jets at MetLife Stadium this Sunday, a 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. It's technically the 17th game because when the league expanded the schedule a couple of years ago, they added one interconference game, and this year the 17th game is between the AFC East and the NFC South. Before we get into this game, you should know that this Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. Well, Aaron, great to be with you. I think the last time we did this was 2 years ago. These teams were getting ready to play a game in London. Now we have some December football to look forward to.
Yeah. I thought the Falcons did really well against Zach Wilson on that day, and unfortunately, they will not get the ability to do really well against Zach Wilson on this day. So we'll see how Tim Boyle, I guess, handles it. Although I imagine most folks in New York are talking about the other quarterback on the roster that may be potentially coming back in the coming weeks, I guess.
Yeah, you talk about top stories. I guess for the Jets, it's Aaron Rodgers, who on Wednesday, the Jets announced that he was returning to practice, and the way it works is that you get 21 days to practice with the team, and you don't have to count against the 53-man roster. And then at the end of that 3-week stretch, you have to make a decision, either give him a roster spot or he's done for the season. But I don't know. I'm not sure Aaron Rodgers is actually going to play this year, and I don't think it'd be a very good idea, to be honest with you, Aaron, because the Jets don't look like they're going anywhere. If this team was like right in the playoff race, if they were holding down the 7th seed, or they were like, a game out, they were right there, I could see it. Jets are 2 games out with 6 to go. They're in 15th place in the 16-team conference. I almost wonder like what's the upside of playing Aaron Rodgers again this year?
Yeah, I can understand that. Although knowing the Falcons and their tendency to give hope and optimism for their opposing team, I wouldn't necessarily kill that dream of Aaron Rodgers coming back just yet until after this Sunday, because it would not totally shock me if somehow the Jets came away with a W here, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, maybe there is a chance that we can bring Aaron Rodgers back and maybe make a push. The Falcons are historically this sort of get right team, and I think that kind of leads into what their biggest story of the week is whether or not this team is for real or not. And when I talk about the Falcons, I'm not only talking about the team, but I'm also talking about the quarterback and Desmond Ridder, because this Jets matchup was a game that I circled like a month ago when the Falcons were going through their should we bench Ridder or not. And it was thinking, my thought process then was, they'll come out of the bye. Hopefully they'll play a good performance coming out of the bye against the Saints last week. They did. They arguably had their best game of the year coming out of the bye. But this game on the road would really kind of tell us whether or not this Falcon team is a good football team or not, or really an ascending team, or what has been the sort of norm this year has been they've been pretty good at home and very bad on the road. And, a lot of that stems from Desmond Ridder, and he's pretty efficient at home. I think if you look at his adjusted net yards per attempt, or Anya, he's an above average quarterback at home on a similar level to a player like Matt Stafford and Derek Carr, which isn't necessarily elite quarterback play, but for a first year starter, that's a pretty good spot to be in. But then when you look at his efficiency, that same metric, adjusted net yards per attempt on the road, he's at the bottom of the league. He's basically barely above what Zach Wilson's efficiency is in that regard. And, I'm probably not talking to someone who's very familiar with Zach Wilson's struggles. So, that is a testament to those struggles. And part of the reason why Ridder has been so poor on the road is because he tends to turn the ball over at a rate almost twice as much as he does at home. And he tends to take a sack nearly 3 times the rate that he does at home. And, you look at this Jets team, and one of the 2 things that they do defensively that they do better than most teams in the league is they pressure the quarterback and they create turnovers. And so that's a bad mix. And so I think this week is going to be a real telling on how far Ridder has come and how far this team has come, if they can sort of avoid particularly the turnovers this week, which is something that they've struggled to do this year. And if they can sort of check that box and play a clean football game, they potentially walk away with a W. And that will be another indicator that, okay, maybe Desmond Ridder could be their long-term answer at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I think that kind of meshes with what, if we're going to get away from the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, what I think the top storyline of the week for the New York Jets is, and that's, I guess it still kind of meshes with Aaron Rodgers, but can the Jets generate anything on offense? Because right now it's very difficult for this team to win games, even when the defense is playing well. And, I don't think they've played particularly great the last couple of weeks, but look, everybody knows what happened right before the half on Friday. The already famous just a few days later, interception, pick six on a Hail Mary. But I think people kind of lost track of what happened in that stretch. With 1 minute and 5 seconds left in the first half, the New York Jets were down by 10 points. In the last 65 seconds of the half, they had a pick six by Brandon Eccles. They had a second interception with DJ Reed, and they went into the locker room down 11. So 2 interceptions, 1 pick six, and somehow you trail by more after that goes down, of course, because of the whatever you want to call it. I've heard all different sorts of names for the Hail Mary interception. And I think there's a lot of bad luck with something like that. I don't think that was necessarily an egregious failure by anybody, but it's kind of a microcosm of the season. It kind of, sometimes when you're having a bad season, sometimes when you're having a really bad stretch of football, something ridiculous happens. If you go back to 2012, there's that famous play where I don't even want to tell you that name, where Mark Sanchez slid into one of his offensive linemen and fumbled, and the Patriots ran that back for a touchdown. And it kind of got, like I just told you, it kind of got lost in the shuffle that was part of a 1 minute span in that game during the butt fumble, where the Jets allowed the Patriots to score touchdowns when the Jets were on offense, when the Jets were on defense, and when the Jets were on special teams. And you just have these ridiculously bad stretches in seasons like this. I've seen so many of them with the Jets. And it's to the point where this offense is so ineffective that I don't know how the Jets can win games unless the defense is producing a ton of turnovers. In the 4 wins the Jets have had this season, 2 of them came in games where they produced 4 turnovers. And I think this is a good defense. I don't care how good your defense is. You can't count on that. And the Jets really, I don't think they have many answers. Now, they've had some bad luck. The offensive line's been beaten up. They've had to shuffle guys in and out all season long. It's been very rare. You've gone 2 straight weeks with the same offensive line combo. The offensive line that played last week resembled the type of offensive line you'd see in the fourth quarter of a preseason game. Guys who are, bottom of the roster type players who are on this offensive line. You combine that with a skill group that's got one good back in Breece Hall and one good receiver in Garrett Wilson and not a whole lot else. You combine that with Tim Boyle at quarterback. Aaron, you said you're disappointed you don't get to go up against Zach Wilson. Let me tell you something. You're going to really love Tim Boyle if plays anything like what we saw against the Miami Dolphins, because this was a guy who just didn't look like he wanted to throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field all game. That the Hail Mary was one of the few times before garbage time that he actually threw the ball, past more than 10 yards. It's just really bad on offense. There's not really much redeeming on this offense. So with the Jets, can you scratch anything out? Because this is a defense that it's good enough to win most games. It's just this offense can't get anything going.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be the big challenge for the Falcons, where you give that offense opportunities by turning the ball over as frequently as the Falcons have done this year. And if they can play a clean game, as you say, it doesn't feel like the Jets are going to really have the firepower to be able to put up enough points. And basically the Falcons, their biggest problem is they tend to shoot themselves in the foot. And so basically, if you can just not pull the trigger on that gun on your hip or whatever, that proverbial gun on your hip, and shoot yourself in the foot, just leave it in the holster. You don't have to shoot it. You can just leave it in the holster. No one gets hurt. And that's kind of how the Falcons should try to play this game. And we'll see, when we break down some of these matchups, whether or not they can play that way.
And we are going to get ahead to some of these key matchups, but ahead here on this crossover Thursday of Locked On Jets and Locked On Falcons, where Aaron and I will tell you the key battles on both sides of the ball we're looking at. This episode of Locked On Jets and Locked On Falcons is brought to you by PrizePicks. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections on PrizePicks across football and basketball from the Specials League. That's a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or different leagues. For example, you can pick LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of three-pointers made and PrizePicks. You may want to know what PrizePicks is. Well, PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And now PrizePicks offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. And PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with this injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100 using PrizePicks. This is this crossover edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Falcons. I'm John Butchko, Locked On Jets, alongside Aaron Freeman, the host of Locked On Falcons. We want to thank you everydayers for tuning in, and thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Aaron, let's talk key matchups. What do you have your eyes on in this Week 13 game?
Well, it's all about the trenches, because I think where the Jets potentially can sort of assert their will in this game is along their defensive line with the Falcons offensive line that has been up and down this year. Now they're coming off a game against the Saints, which was arguably their best game of the year. Obviously they ran for a lot of yards, and I think that's going to be their game plan again this week, because I don't necessarily like the matchups when it comes to holding up against this Jets pass rush, where Caleb McGarry typically struggles against speed, and that's basically Bryce Huff, Will McDonald, all the guys that they have off the edge basically are tailor-made to give Caleb McGarry a very rough day. And, you have Matthew Bergeron. And a big reason why I think the Falcons rushing game was so successful last week was because it was really the first game that their rookie left guard, and Matthew Bergeron, was a positive factor in the run game. And this week he's going to be challenged going up against Quinnen Williams, who often lines up on that side of the defensive line. And we've seen Bergeron struggle against some of these premier D tackles that he's faced this year, Jeffrey Simmons, Kenny Clark, Jonathan Allen, etc. This year. And so it's going to be a challenge for Bergeron to kind of stack another really strong game going up against Williams this week. And so it's going to be pivotal for the Falcons to be able to run the football, I think, in this game, because they don't want to get into third and longs where this Jets pass rush can pin their ears back and really give this offensive line a lot of problems. So the question is going to be whether or not the Falcons can run the ball against the Jets, who have a generally solid run defense. From what I gather, it's not necessarily elite or anything like that, but they're going to be based off of the game that the Falcons are coming off against the Saints. They're going to be geared up to sort of stop that run. So that's going to be the big challenge. If the Falcons offensive line doesn't basically get their butts kicked in this game, that hopefully will do much more of the butt kicking. Although again, if they just kind of break even, that will be a win, I think, in the Falcons book, that will allow them to play the style of offense that they want to play.
Yeah, I have a similar mindset. I look at Bijan Robinson versus this Jets, I guess we call it the front six because the Jets play most of the time in nickel. I really love Bijan Robinson, and I'm not a big fan of drafting a running back early, but heading into the draft last year, this was the guy I really was hoping would fall to the Jets at 15, because I just think he's such a fantastic talent. And this Jets defense, as you mentioned, it's not a bad run defense, but they've had some hiccups through the season, and they've especially had, over the last couple of weeks, they haven't been great tackling in space. They've had some issues there, and that's what worries me in this game. Is I think that this Jets defense is built to give the Falcons passing game some problems. You talked about Desmond Ridder, some of the question marks you've got heading into this game, and the Jets. I've always said that I really like, as many issues as I have with the way the Jets offense is built, I think their defense is built really well, because they've got a lot of quality players and a lot of depth on the defensive line, and a lot of quality players and a lot of depth at the corner position. And I've said frequently on Locked On Jets that if I can only be good at two spots on defense, I want it to be defensive line and I want it to be corner. And unfortunately, the Jets are are good in more than those spots because they also have 2 linebackers in CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams who are having Pro Bowl caliber seasons. But I worry about the sloppiness of the Jets tackling lately. And some of this has come after games have gotten out of hand. So maybe it's been situations where players maybe have lost their focus a little bit because they knew that the Jets were on their way to a loss. But when I look at this, as you mentioned, I think this Jets defense is going to have to force turnovers to win this game. I think if the Falcons play a clean game, it's going to be very difficult for the Jets. But the one matchup that scares me is Bijan Robinson versus this Falcons versus this Jets defensive front, just from the standpoint as much as I like the guys on the Jets defensive front. First of all, the defensive line's built more to get after the passer than this to stop the run. Jets lost Al Woods a number of weeks ago, probably their best run stopping defensive tackle. I don't think the run defense has been as good since he left the lineup. And Bijan Robinson is just such a fantastic talent. And then you flip things on the other side of the ball, and I'm just very worried about this Jets offensive line. As I mentioned, it's a shaky unit. It was a unit that had a lot of question marks, even when everybody was healthy at the start of the season. I look at some of the interior defensive linemen the Falcons have. You've got David Oyamada. You've got the ageless wonder Calais Campbell, who was rumored to be a Jets target this offseason, going up against an interior of a Jets defensive line that's got we don't know who's going to be playing there because the Jets may be welcoming Mekhi Becton back this week, so they may kick Max Mitchell inside. Mitchell hasn't really been great at guard or tackle. Laken Tomlinson's had a very difficult year with the Jets. Joe Tippmann, rookie center, has been okay. You have Xavier Newman, who's started a couple of games and really not been very good. You have issues because, first of all, I don't think the talent level's that high, but second of all, on the offensive line, you have a spot where chemistry matters, and the Jets when you constantly changing guys every week, it takes a toll on your line play, and I think it's taken a toll on the Jets this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think Onyemata is kind of the alpha on the Falcons defensive line with Grady Jarrett out for the year due to ankle injury or whatever, some leg injury. I can't remember what it was, but I think ACL. That's what it was. ACL. The most famous or infamous, I guess, leg injury. But so I'm hoping Onyemata will kind of exert his will in this game when it comes to, because you mentioned it with Tim Boyle and the style of play. I suspect that the Jets are going to play a similar style of game, which is try to run the football, get into some third and manageables type of situations with Tim Boyle, and his propensity to check the ball down won't be as bad an issue if it's 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 4 as opposed to 3rd and 10 or longer. So I think this Falcons defensive line has the work cut out for them, but I do like potentially the favorable matchups with guys like David Onyemata and Calais Campbell on the interior, especially against this Jets interior offensive line that, as you mentioned, hasn't played great. And you couple that with the musical chairs that they're playing, hasn't helped things in that regard.
Yeah, and I think this goes even deeper with the Jets, is that I do think it's kind of a philosophical thing with Robert Saleh. And you could make an argument whether it's the right move or not based on the way this team is currently constructed. But I think Robert Saleh is very much the type of coach who views any drive that ends in the kick as a good drive. He wants to trust his defense to go out there and win games. He wants to win the field position battle. And, he wants to win games like 13-10. And, I don't think that's a great approach in the modern NFL. I think that you can make an argument based on the way the Jets roster is constructed with the lack of offensive firepower, with all the talent on defense. Maybe for this specific team, that's how they have to play. I think maybe they lean into it a little bit too much, even with those factors. But it's going to be, I think this Jets offense is going to be limited no matter what. Part of it's just going to be designed. I think they're not going to take a lot of chances. I think in some ways Tim Boyle's the quarterback that they want in there because, even though I shouldn't say he's not going to turn the ball over, but he's going to play very conservative football. And, he's not going to, he may make the big mistake, but it's not going to be taking a reckless gamble.
Yeah, definitely. So, I've seen Tim Boyle put in work against the Falcons when he was with the Detroit Lions, and he started a game in replacement for Matt Stafford, and the Lions nearly won that game. Which, he threw an interception at the goal line in the final seconds, and that was what sealed the win for the Falcons. So I am not underestimating Tim Boyle, because I've seen Tim Boyle nearly beat a Matt Ryan-led Falcons team back in 2021. And I feel like this Jets team is much more talented than that Lions team. And I like to also believe that this Falcons team is much more talented today, but they don't have Matt Ryan. And so We'll see sort of if Tim Boyle can get his revenge this week against the Falcons. But I guess will be something we'll talk about sort of as we wrap up today's episode, talking maybe about some sort of keys to victory and give some final predictions.
I love it, the Tim Boyle revenge game. We're going to get into that as we continue this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Falcons. We'll give you our predictions and whether Tim Boyle gets that revenge against the Atlanta Falcons.
So, guys, good, bad, or in between, it is tough to root for your favorite team on an empty stomach, especially when there are teams like the Jets and Falcons that frustrate you so much. And you want to order food when your team is winning so you can celebrate. You want to order food when your team is struggling so you can get that little pick-me-up, and DoorDash is the way to do it with the unbeatable deals for your watch party, your tailgate, or whatever you want to do to get game day ready. All your favorite restaurants, stores, from retail to grocery, are available on the app, and you can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. That's 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Don't forget to use that code LOCKED23, LOCKED23, for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more, subject to change, terms apply.
Our episode today is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot at FanDuel. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. And Jets fans and Falcons fans, let me give you the line for this Sunday's game. Even though it's at MetLife Stadium, the Falcons are 3-point road favorites. This game has an over-under of 34 points. It's a very low over-under, although I don't know. Aaron, I'm still tempted to take the under in this one, watching the Jets offense this season. So, if you're a Falcons fan and you're confident, if you're a Jets fan and you want to take the points, remember, FanDuel gives you $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. Their app is really easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Aaron, the host of Locked On Falcons. We've given you the key storylines for these two teams. We've gone through some of the key matchups to watch. Aaron, how do you see this one playing out?
Well, I think this is a low-scoring game. You talk about Robert Saleh wants to win a game 13-10. He'll have an opportunity because I do not expect the Falcons to put up the points that they need to. I just think this Jets defense is going to be a tough matchup for them, given, even though they do have weapons. As you mentioned, Bijan Robinson's, I think, going to have another really brilliant game to be the guy that can match up most favorably. Maybe we get a sprinkling of Kyle Pitts like the last time he had a big game in that London game 2 years ago. But I expect Sauce Gardner to pretty much lock up, Drake London in this game, but would love to be wrong in that projection. So I think this game is probably going to be very similar to other games the Jets have played, like earlier this season against the Patriots or against the Raiders. And I think that Patriots model is kind of the blueprint for the Falcons' success. Run the football and try to win this game, 13-10. I think the Patriots won that game 15-10. And, play clean, don't turn the ball over. If you can just run the ball effectively, make enough plays in the air, kick a bunch of field goals, you can win that sort of low scoring game. And as I said, turnovers will be key. You just can't gift wrap Tim Boyle and the rest of this Jets team any opportunities, any short fields, because as you say, a lot of the points over the last couple of weeks have been off of turnovers, whether it's a pick six, whether it's a short field, all those various things. And so if you can just play a clean, conservative, run heavy, boring type of game, I think that plays to the Falcons' favor, but they just haven't done a great job doing that. But I ultimately do think in the fourth quarter, it's going to be close. And I have a little bit more confidence in Desmond Ridder than Tim Boyle at this point to make the plays that the Falcons need to make to win this game. So I got them winning this game like 13-10.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you, Aaron. You brought back a bad memory. I completely blocked this out, but you mentioned Kyle Pitts in that London game, and now I'm remembering the Jets lining up wrong and somehow getting John Franklin Myers, a 300-pound defensive lineman, one-on-one against Pitts in that game. I remember that was a topic of a couple days. We went over that for a couple days on Locked On Jets. I still don't think I'm quite over that. I just don't have a lot of confidence in this Jets team right now. And I hate to say that I saw it coming, but I remember doing these crossover shows the last 4 weeks. A couple weeks back, I said, I know when I see a Jets season falling apart. I've been following the Jets for 3 decades now. I've seen this happen a lot where the team just doesn't have confidence. In fact, part of me, like the conspiracy theorist in me, is wondering, like, did Aaron Rodgers come back to practice because like they're just trying to like inspire to get people fired up or something like that? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's a little too far out there. I'm not going to endorse that conspiracy theory, but I just don't see where the offense is coming from for the Jets in this game. I think if they're going to win, they're going to have to do what they've done in 2 of their 4 wins, and that's force, 3 to 4 turnovers. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Bijan Robinson on the ground will do just, he'll get just enough done. I think the Jets will make just enough mistakes on offense. Jets special teams, which was excellent the first, I'd say, half of the season. The last couple of weeks, they've gotten much shakier. I don't have as much faith as in the close game as I did at the early stage of the season. So I think 13-10 sounds about right. I think I'm definitely taking the under on that 34. It's crazy to say you take the under on the 34 point over under, but yeah. I think I'm going to, because I just don't see how these teams are going to combine for 34 points. So I think you got it about right, Aaron. I'm going 13-10. I think the Falcons, continue this run. Maybe they can steal the NFC South this year.
Well, you say the Jets need to turn the ball over, get about 3 takeaways, and that's definitely possible with the Falcons and some of the games that they've played this year, especially on the road. So I wouldn't put it past the Jets defense being able to do that if the Falcons, their typical road performance shows up again. And again, that goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where it's like you want to see some progress from this team. Again, I don't expect them to go out there and drop a 30 burger on this Jets team. I just need them to just play a clean football game. And, if it is a, 13-10 type of ball game, a 14-13 type of game, as long as they play clean, like I'll take that at this point for this team in this matchup. So we'll see what's what with both of these teams on Sunday.
Yeah, and I was thinking back through the history of these 2 teams, and I remember they played like a December game. I think it was 2009, Rex Ryan's first season, and the Falcons won it. Falcons won it on like a late touchdown from Matt Ryan to Tony Gonzalez on 4th down. Yeah, and that was it was a very low scoring game. It was a game where I think the Jets messed up. I think the Jets missed 3 field goals in that game. Maybe one was blocked. They had a bad snap on another. It was a sloppy game, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was something resembling that in this one.
Yeah, there's been a couple of those games between the Jets and Falcons. I recall one maybe in like 2017. It was a rainy game. And that one was another one that wasn't necessarily the greatest game. I think the Falcons did walk away. So I guess these ugly games, the Falcons find a way to pull these out. But we'll see if they can continue that mojo and continue that trend on Sunday.
Well, Aaron, it was great chatting with you. Always enjoy these. We got to do it. We get to do these 2 years apart because of the 17th game. Usually we have to wait 4 years for this, but it's always great chatting with you, and wish you luck the rest of the way. Maybe you guys can pull out that NFC South.
Absolutely. Hopefully the Falcons will be a team that actually deserves to make the playoffs and not just be the best worst team in a terrible division. And we'll see how that goes. But I think this game will tell us a lot more about whether this Falcon team actually is decent enough to merit a playoff spot, or whether or not they're just faking it until they make it.
Well, Jets fans, I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets. He's Aaron Freeman, the host of Locked On Falcons. Hope you've enjoyed this crossover Thursday show. Tomorrow, Aaron and I will preview the games on Locked On Jets and Locked On Falcons. We'll see you then.